College football officially behind us. Sad that the journey there has ended, but now, Joe, we are another day closer to March, and March Madness is right around the corner. We are in the thick of conference play now. Some awesome games last night in the SEC and college basketball. I'm in a really nice weekend coming up as well. We got games to break down Friday, a full slate Saturday, and then even a big time as we start to talk some teams that are kind of floating around the bubble. Sunday is a big time bubble game on some teams that are going to be flirting with tournament spots. So disappointing end for your Irish, but a great season, a really fun college football season, a pretty successful, I think, at least Final Four for the college football playoff. But any last second college football thoughts, Joe, before we finally turn the page to college basketball full time?
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, when you're down 31-7, it kind of makes you reflect a lot earlier than you might want to. That was a great season. Like if you told me after that NIU game that we'd bounce back and go all the way to the national title game, I would laugh in your face. I think Marcus Freeman is awesome, and I think the fact that going forward, he's only a 39-year-old coach, and we're gonna get him for however long he wants to stay there. But if he realistically wants to stay there, he could be there for 20, 30 years, which is so awesome to have a guy that young and a guy that makes the players like they love him so much, and he has just people gravitate towards him and want to play for him. I think that's great. And one thing I noticed with the national title game, unlike Notre Dame in years past when they were getting blown out, they fought back. Like they didn't just roll over and die. Like against Bama, that was just a pathetic showing. Same thing with I believe it was 2018. We played Clemson in the playoff and got smoked. And then the COVID year, we were the 4 seed and Bama smoked us. The fact that they fought back, I think, means a lot too. I mean, they were in a position, believe it or not, to like win the game. Like I know, Notre Dame kind of rattled off a bunch of points, and the score might not have been as close as it, seemed, but Notre Dame, if I hated the fact that we tried to kick a field goal. I really hated that. Because then, some people were like, oh, well, if they made it after Ohio State made the field goal, they'd only be down 8. Ohio State would have been playing to score a touchdown to finish that game off if that was the case, if Notre Dame had that field goal. But honestly, at the end of the day, this is the first time really with Notre Dame. Brian Kelly, I always like there was a clear ceiling with Brian Kelly. Marcus Freeman, the ceiling I think is much higher, and I think that the program is heading in the right direction, which I haven't felt like that in a very long time. Like I said with Brian Kelly, I kind of felt like he tapped out everything. He's also a scumbag and not fun to root for. So I think the fact that you have a guy that makes Notre Dame a likable team again is awesome. So I'm very happy with the future. Sucks to lose, the title game, but I'm happy with Notre Dame going forward.
Yeah, I thought the cool thing was, I mean, it was for both teams that were in the national title, and this is some of the people's like gripe about the 12-team playoff. Like Notre Dame, their season would have been done against Northern Illinois after that loss, and when you look at Ohio State as well after the loss to Michigan, they would have been their season would have been over. But I think it was clear at the end that Notre Dame and Ohio State were two of at least the best 4 teams in the country. I think Ohio State proved throughout the playoff that they were the best team. And I was on the kind of train that Notre Dame, since that Northern Illinois game, I thought they were playing as good, if not better than anyone in the entire nation. So I thought like the 12-team playoff was cool because it allowed teams to like not like have a slip up, but it just kind of showed like some resiliency. And like throughout it's kind of like more so like the NFL, like the Eagles, you look at them at the beginning of the year, 2-2, people wanted the coaching staff fired. They wanted Jalen Hurts benched. They wanted everything in between, as we always do in Philadelphia rationally. And look at them now. They have only lost 1 game, and it was when Hurts got hurt, and the Eagles are now 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl. Like it just kind of goes to show you, gives these teams a chance to like grow and just be resilient throughout the year. And I thought that was kind of cool for both Notre Dame and Ohio State, who had such 2 big losses in the regular season, to be able to bounce back and make a run to the title game. That was just kind of what I took away from that in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. But a fun year for sure, and already looking forward to next year. I have an awesome season coming up as well in college football. But time to dive into college basketball now, and we start on Friday night in the Big East. Villanova at 12-8. Has probably played themselves off the bubble. A win here maybe gets them back in the conversation. A loss here, falling to 12-9, probably as good as done. They travel to Marquette, who's 16-3. 7 o'clock tip on FS1. Marquette projected to win 76-67 on Haslam. So we'll go Marquette minus 8.5, over under 133.5.
Yeah, a Nova team that definitely is starting to get towards that life support picture in terms of an at-large bid here. But I'm going to go with Marquette 84, Nova 75. So I'm going to take Marquette minus 8.5. I'm going to go over 133.5. I mean, it's just the downfall of Villanova basketball is compared to what it was under Jay Wright is insane to me. I mean, they were coming off a Final Four. They were one of the most consistent programs, one of the best programs at that time. Because I mean, you guys in 2016 and 2018 did win it all. Like we weren't that far removed at the time from those, appearances in the national title game, Final Fours and stuff under Jay Wright. And now here they are, another season they're in danger of missing the NCAA tournament, sitting at 12-8. And really, it's kind of the Eric Dixon show. If he's playing well, you guys have a chance in every single game. That is one of the beauties of college basketball. I think that, you don't really get to see in a lot of other sports where one player can kind of put a team on his back and help carry a team to a lot more wins than maybe, their talent as a whole adds up to. But I just think unless Villanova really starts to get some other options for Dixon to kind of take some of that pressure off of him, it's going to be tough for this team going forward. I mean, if you can beat Marquette, you still have a bunch of big games left. You still get Marquette coming to you. You still get UConn later in the year at UConn where you already beat them once. So you're not dead yet, but it's not looking good, especially considering the fact that, home loss to Columbia and a loss at St. Joe's is sitting there on that resume.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, kind of like if they win this game, maybe you give yourself some life, but you're more likely than not probably headed for an NIT at best. And I think Kyle Neptune would have to go in that situation. But I still have watched a ton of Nova this year, and they definitely have gotten better. Like they look better from the beginning of the season, even last season to now. They just sort of have struggled to close games. Poplar the other night against Georgetown gets ejected for throwing a punch. Doesn't even land the punch, but still gets ejected in that game. Villanova winds up losing that one with a late collapse. It's just kind of the same things over and over again with this Villanova team holding them back. Marquette only being an 8.5-point favorite here kind of surprised me. If that is a spread, I really like them in that one. They're a very good team at home, and I think the best team this year in the Big East, even over UConn. I'm going to go Marquette to win this one, protect home court. I definitely like a little higher scoring as well. I'm going to go 80-70. So Marquette minus 8.5 over 133.5. And then a really good game on Friday night. Dare I say this might even be the best game of the weekend, Joe? Maybe the one I'm looking forward to the most, at least. Number 21, Michigan at 14-4. They've been a really fun watch this year. Really like watching them on offense. At number 11, Purdue, who's 15-5. Purdue coming off a home loss the other night to a Ohio State team that's not a projected tournament team right now. Very rare for them to lose at Mackey Arena. Can they come back and win this one after losing that one? 8 o'clock tip on Fox. Purdue projected to win 75-72. So go Purdue minus 2.5 over under 146.5.
Yeah, Coyle, and it's because of that. I mean, I think this is a pretty good bounce back against a very good Michigan team. I mean, what Dusty May has done for this Michigan program is, kind of like how everything I was just saying negative about Villanova, flip it around for the positive for Michigan. Michigan kind of felt like a stale program for a while under Juwan Howard. I mean, they'd get in these big, headline games, and they'd be in the news a lot, but the results weren't there on the court. Now, they look very good this year. Vlad Golden coming over from FAU with him. He's had a monster year. He just had 31 the other night against Northwestern. I think Purdue come though at home, like I said, like I was saying earlier, in a bounce back spot. National primetime game, especially on a Friday night. Students are going to be rowdy. Kids are back on campus. I think Purdue will get it done here at home against Michigan.
Yeah, I'm going to go Purdue as well. I'm not a huge fan of this Purdue team. This is a Purdue team that I'll probably look to fade. Like, it kind of reminds me of the old Matt Painter squads. Like, this will be a 3 or a 4 seed and potentially get upset there in the first round. I really like this Michigan team. I think they're going to be a tough team to prepare for. Danny Wolf is one of the funner players to watch in college basketball, running like point guard, having the ball in his hands, running pick and roll and stuff at his size. He's an awesome watch, and this is a really fun Michigan team. But I think it's really hard to see Purdue losing 2 straight games at Mackey Arena. I just said that it's not the Purdue of old of the past couple of years. I think they might be an early tournament exit, but still, home court advantage matters a lot in college basketball, and I see Purdue bouncing back in this one. I'll take them to win and to cover -2.5. I'll go 80-75, and I will take the over of 146.5. Or we go to Saturday now. Number 9, Kentucky at 14-4 travels to Vandy. One of the surprises in college hoops at 15-4. 2:30 tip on ESPN. Kentucky 83-82 is the projected score. So go Kentucky -1.5 here on the road. Over under 164.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kentucky here, 85-77. I mean, I really love Vandy. Massive win against Tennessee. That was really cool last weekend. They had, Saturday, the men's team won, and then Sunday, the women's team beat Tennessee at home. I mean, great year. If you're at Vandy in terms of their, sports, you're beating Bama at home, you're beating your rival in Tennessee. I mean, this is the best I think I've seen Vandy as a collective in basketball in a very long time. But I'm going to go with Kentucky here. I just think Kentucky's a very good team, legit title contender. I was thinking about putting some money on them to actually win it all and place the future the next time I'm out of Connecticut. So I'm going to go with Kentucky here, 85-77. So I'll take a -1.5. And I'm going to go with the under 164.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kentucky to win this one as well. Kentucky's been a little bit weird. Like they definitely struggle on the road. They also struggled last week at home against Alabama. I talked about Alabama though in a video on social media today. I think Alabama at their best is the best team in the country, even over Auburn and Duke. I like that Alabama team at their peak the most. So I'm not really taking much away from that loss against Alabama last week. But Kentucky has definitely struggled on the road, been a different team. But it's starting to become not like put up or shut up time. Like you're sitting here at 14-4, number 9 in the country, you're still looking pretty. But if you're going to be kind of talked about and respected as a Final Four contender, even a contender there in the SEC, you have to win these type of games. And Vandy's having a good year. Vandy's probably going to go to the tournament. But Kentucky, to be a legit team, they have to start going on the road and winning these games. I think this is kind of a statement win going here on the road to an upstart Vanderbilt team, and Kentucky's going to get it done. I'm going to go 84-80 in this one. So Kentucky -1.5, under 164.5 there. All right, we go to a team that has been reeling a little bit. They had some big wins early in the season. They've kind of struggled the past couple weeks in SEC play. Georgia at 14-5 travels to number 5 Florida, who had a big time back win at South Carolina last night. Florida 17 SEC Network. Florida projected to win here 77-65. So Florida -11.5, over under 141.5.
So I'm going to go with Florida here, 81-77. I think Georgia is going to keep it close. I love Georgia plus the 11.5. I feel like in these rivalry games, a lot of times if you see a spread that big, take it. Like I think Georgia will be able to keep it within the number. I'm going to go over 141.5 as well. And Coyle, Georgia might be, a victim of just how good the SEC is. We were talking about it, about you may have some of these teams playing in the first day of this conference tournament that might be projected 8-9 seeds in the NCAA tournament. I think Georgia is going to be one of those teams that they can rattle off, if they can kind of win the games they're supposed to win going forward, I still think they'll be fine in terms of going to the tournament. This is just a brutal, another brutal game for them. Like they'll, some people are going to look and say, oh, they're 2-5. This team isn't for real. But then you look at just the stretch of games they've had. Ole Miss, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Auburn were all in the top 25. At Arkansas, and then at number 5 Florida. I mean, out of 7 games, you played 6 teams in the top 25. That's just a brutal stretch. And then you got South Carolina, Bama after this. There's no breaks in the SEC. If they can just get a couple of wins at home, I still think they'll be good for the tournament. But just, brutal. Like if you're a slightly less talented team, like, I know we're making fun of all the SEC, like hypothetical people for football, but I would be really interested to see if you put this Georgia team in one of the other power conferences and see how they would do.
Yeah, this Georgia team, like I'm definitely lower on than some of these other kind of teams hovering around. Like they're kind of in the mix with like Texas, Missouri, even like the Vanderbilt team we talked about. Like their season could completely go off the rails. I mean, they could be a team that we looked like, or even Oklahoma in that mix too, like a team that we looked at a few weeks ago had that ranking next to their name, but you're in the conference play now. You're in this murderer's row type of schedule. You could go completely off the rails and not even make the tournament. I think Georgia kind of falls in that ballpark. I think they're definitely more of a pretender than a contender. So I'm going to have Florida win this game at home, but Georgia give them a decent enough fight to cover that number of 11.5. I'll go Florida 85, Georgia 80. So Georgia plus 11.5 over 141.5. All right. I don't know if this is like maybe just because college football was dominating so much, but for Duke to be sitting here at number 2 in the country at 16-2 with the number 1 pick in Cooper Flag, I feel like I still haven't seen as much buzz and as much hype around them. Maybe it's just because I'm starting to get more locked into college basketball now. But I just feel like in past years, this Duke has gotten so much more buzz. But they're sitting here at number 2 in the country at 16-2, dominating pretty much everyone that they've came across so far in ACC play. They'll travel to Wake Forest for a tough game against the 15-4 Demon Deacons. Remember last year they played a classic game down there. I think Wake Forest even won that one on a buzzer beater. But this is a 4:30 tip on ESPN. Duke projected a roll here, 70-58. So we'll go Duke minus 13.5, over under 129.5.
Yeah, Coyle, that was the game where Filipowski, you thought he got his leg amputated last year. I mean, you would have thought that his leg exploded the way he got carried off the court. Yeah, Wake Forest last year was I believe it was a buzzer beater as well, but I know they won. They stormed the court. You know, Filipowski, it was all over ESPN. They were calling for the death of that Wake Forest student, that poor kid. But I'm going to go Wake Forest again is going to stun Duke at home, 65-64. I love Wake Forest plus 13.5. I'm going to go under 129.5, only by the hook. I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game. If Wake Forest wants to win this game, they're going to have to play good defense, keep it close. You know, they're coming off a big win against North Carolina the other night. This has got to be a massive week if you're a Wake Forest fan, when you're clearly like the third, fourth team in your own state in terms of rooting interest, and you get the 2 big dogs back to back. I mean, I'm very excited to see the atmosphere. I think this is going to be very interesting to see how Duke handles it. Because, you know, Duke's coming off a little stretch here. They haven't really played their last couple of games any world beaters. You know, their toughest game, you can argue, was at Boston College, who's currently 9-10, because Pitt has kind of fallen off the rails as well, now sitting at 12-6. That was at home. So I'm really interested to see how they do here. I'm going to go Wake Forest to pull off the upset. But even if they can't win it, if the spread is 13.5 for Wake Forest, I mean, I love that number. And I don't care if that's chalk or whatever, if the public's all over it, I will definitely take Wake Forest plus 13.5.
Yeah, that's one with like the analytics. They probably don't have the home court, at least, or for that situation, kind of baked into it. I can't see that number being more than 9.5, I would think. But Duke has been rolling and has been dominating pretty much every team that they've faced. But going on the road here in conference play is a different animal. I do like Duke to win. This is a game that I'm definitely going to be tuned into because I'm trying to see more of this Duke team and really how legit are they. But a big one for Wake Forest too. Started out slow. In the past few years, Wake Forest has been like a exciting offensive team, has struggled more on the defensive end. This team, they're really good on the defensive end. So are they able to kind of bottle up Cooper Flag and the rest of those Duke kind of guards that have been making a pretty good impression at the beginning of this season so far? I definitely like Wake to cover that 13.5 as well, but I'm going to take Duke to win 70-67 here. Won't be surprised if this is an upset game, but I will take the over as well of 129.5. As I said, Wake Forest has been playing in some really low-scoring games. That's a really low total, though, for a Duke squad that can really put up some points. So I'm going to go with Duke to win, but I will take Wake to cover and the over there. All right, big one in the SEC. This kind of feels like it would be a 3:30 game on CBS for college football. But number 16, Ole Miss at 15-4 travels to number 22, Missouri at 15-4 as well. Ole Miss coming off a really bad loss last night at home to Texas A&M. They were up pretty much the entire game and went to bed, and they were up by 7 or 8. And I woke up and I saw A&M won. That was a surprising one. Mizzou coming off a loss to Texas the other night. 6 o'clock tip on SEC Network. Mizzou projected to win here 72-70. So we'll go Mizzou minus 2.5, over under 141.5.
Yeah, Coyle, I gotta have a game for Ole Miss. You know, you said it. They just had a brutal loss to A&M, and that was coming off an overtime loss to their arch rivals in Mississippi State. You know, they won at Alabama a couple, like I think it was 10 days ago now. Today's the 23rd. Okay, so 9 days ago. You know, coming off back-to-back losses here, you really want to try to avoid that 3-game skid. I just don't think they'll be able to do that. I got Mizzou winning this game 75-71. I'll take Mizzou minus the 2.5. I'm going to go over 141.5. I mean, we've talked about the SEC and how tough their schedule is ad nauseum, and I'm just kind of going with that. Like, it's tough to go to your arch rival, come home, lose a heartbreaker. Now you got to go back on the road to another team who Mizzou, they've had their ups and downs, but now, they're really starting to seem like they're back. They're starting to really build themselves up as a program, ranked 22nd in the country. Their fans are going to be rabid. They get a big game at home. I think that's just going to be too much for Ole Miss to overcome, so I am going with the Tigers here.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't talked about that much, but Mizzou went 0-18 in the SEC last year. Usually when you see that, that's a cleaning of the house situation. So, credit to Dennis Gates. He had a good first year at Missouri, made the tournament last year, obviously a disaster. This year, it looks like he's got this team certainly back in the mix for a tournament spot, a top 25 ranking. I think Missouri is one of the stories of the sport in college basketball this year. Just another really good team in this loaded SEC. I'm going to have them win this game at home. We talked about it on last week's show, though, like with Ole Miss playing Alabama and Mississippi State last week, when they went on the road and beat Alabama, and then they were like, all right, basically, we're okay with if we lose that Mississippi State game. Like, the goal this week was to split. Now for Ole Miss to come back and lose this week to Texas A&M, I'm not saying this is a must-win game, but you're going to start falling into a losing streak here, potentially 3 games. It's a tough spot to go to, a really good Mizzou team, but there's no nights off in this conference. I'm going to side with the home team, but I will go Ole Miss to cover the 2.5. I'll take Mizzou to win by actually the projected score 72-70. I'll take the over of 141.5. But I think Ole Miss keeps this one really close. This is one that comes down to the wire, but Mizzou pulls it out and gets the win at the end. All right, we go to the Big 12 now. Number 7, Houston, who's back on their stranglehold shit on defense. They had dominating performance last night against Utah. They're 15-3. Traveling to Lawrence to play number 12 Kansas at 14-4. 6:30 tip on ESPN. Houston projected favorites in this one. Projected to win 65-61. So Houston minus 3.5. Over under 125.5. I remember this was one of the big games last year. I think it was Super Bowl weekend last year, because I think I actually parlayed the Chiefs with Kansas in this one. I don't know why I remember that, but it was such a big deal that Kansas was actually an underdog in this one, and then they went and rolled Houston. Do you see a similar scenario this week, getting Kansas at home at Fog Allen Fieldhouse as a dog, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they always show the stats, but like Bill Self at home, I know they had the loss to West Virginia to start off Big 12 play, and that was like a real big shocker. But I think Kansas at home, ESPN, going to be one of the primetime games of the weekend. I think Kansas gets it done here 66-62. It'll be low scoring. I have it going over the projected total of 125.5, but I'll definitely take Kansas plus 3.5 at home. I feel like if you get Kansas as a dog, Coy, like you were saying at Fog Allen, that's almost like an auto bet. And I'm so mad I didn't. You brought up quickly the Houston Utah game. I was looking at that game. I tried to get cute and threw a teaser into a parlay that lost by a leg, and Houston won by like 1,000 points. I was just so mad because I looked at that spread and I'm like, I know Utah. They're in their first year in the Big 12, but Utah going to Houston, I don't like. You could have put that at 30. Like I would have still bet it. Like, but I will take Kansas here at home to get the win against Houston.
Yeah, this Houston team is kind of back to their shit, as I said, on the defensive end. They just put these teams in these strangleholds and they suffocate them to death. But it is a different story when you go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I'll take Bill Self and whatever group of 5 guys he could throw on the floor if he's an underdog at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I'll take that 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10. Maybe if you and I are out there, I'll consider not taking it. But any collection of 5 guys that they're able to throw on the floor as a home underdog, I'll bet the Kansas Jayhawks in that spot. So give me them to win this game outright as well. 72-68, Kansas plus 3.5 over 125.5. All right, we go to the Big East now. 2 games left on Saturday. Number 19 UConn at 14-5 travels to Xavier at 12-8, 8 o'clock tip on Fox. Xavier projected to actually win this one, Joe, 72-70. So Xavier minus 2.5, over under 141.5. Xavier kind of in the same boat as Villanova, in need of a big-time win to kind of keep their season afloat. Had a chance last night at St. John's, blew that game, winds up losing in overtime, doesn't even cover the 7.5-point spread at the end. Can they get a big win here over UConn, who, for what I might say, looks like they're reeling a little bit. They're finding a way to win some of these games, but not looking anywhere near as dominant as they have the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the building on Tuesday for that Butler game. That was the really bad show, really bad. That's actually what I was just about to get into. It's very funny. Like I'm saying, really bad. I'm so spoiled with UConn, back-to-back national champs. They're 14-5, and I'm like, the season's over. They're terrible.
It's
But
championship standard now, though.
no, it's that's why. But like, it's funny. Like this is the one team I'm so spoiled with. My other two teams are dog shit. At least from a pro standpoint, Notre Dame's doing pretty well football wise, but yeah, UConn just looks like they're not anywhere. Like they're not going to win the Big East this year. I think their ceiling is Sweet 16, and that's with the right draw. I think their floor, they might lose a couple more games and fall to like a 6 or a 7 seed and get a real tough 11-10. Like I could see, UC Irvine right now is like 17-2. I'm already closing my eyes and imagining UConn as a 6 seed, having to go like out west, playing UC Irvine and losing like 83-81 and getting bounced in the first round of the tournament. Definitely a step back. I mean, McNeely being hurt doesn't help either. He's a big part of this team. Solo Ball is a fucking monster, though. I mean, he is one of those guys. Like he is carrying this team to a lot more wins. Like that had loss written all over it against Butler. I mean, they went up 10. I had UConn minus 12.5. I thought it was the easiest win of my life. They were cruising. And then all of a sudden they just like couldn't score. They couldn't get stops. Defensively, they're terrible. I think going into the Butler game, we looked, I think they were 128 in the country. I haven't looked since then. It probably got worse after that Butler game. But it's the defense, which compared to the last 2 years, their defense was so much better. And this year, it's just not there. And it's very, very noticeable. Like they'll beat the bad teams in the Big East. And, like at home, they'll be able to still compete with some of the best. But this is not a team from a couple years past. I think they lose this game. I have 75-73 Xavier. So I'll take UConn plus 2.5. That's just because of my UConn bias, and I'll take the over. But I think Xavier gets this win, and a team Coyle, like you were saying, they get this win, they'll stick around. Like I think Xavier is going to be that team. I think it was like Providence last year where they were like, oh, if they can just win a couple of games in the Big East tournament, and even like those Big East, like the late Chris Mack teams. Not that he's dead. That sounded crazy. Like the later part of his tenure. I just heard that in my head. That was crazy. Kind of like Xavier was in that same boat. They were like 18-10 to like 19-20-8, and they were fighting to win a couple games in the tournament to maybe get on the bubble. I think that's kind of what we're getting with Xavier this year.
Yeah, my thing with this UConn team and being a Big East guy, I feel like I watch a lot of this UConn squad. My biggest difference between this UConn team and the teams in the years past is like they had so many guys these past 2 years that could hurt you, whether it was the big men in Klingon and Sonogo, the guards, you name them, Cam Spencer, Calcaterra, even like there were so many guys that could beat you on any given night. I feel like this team is so reliant on if Solo Ball's hot and he's shooting well, the team goes. If he's not having a good scoring performance, this team's going to struggle. Like Diarra, he's a really solid player, but you're not relying on him for 20 points per game. I think Caravan's kind of taken a step back this year, but also he's kind of the focal point of a lot of teams' defensive game plans now. He's not the third or fourth option and having open opportunities all night. That's my biggest difference with this UConn team this year and why I think they're struggling. And also, like, I don't know if it's just me potentially, and I know this is a big discussion based off of what Hurley said to the ref the other night, but like, is there a potential that his attitude and his demeanor is starting to wear on some of these players as well? Because that can obviously, when you're winning and things are going well, you can tolerate that and take that attitude from him. But in circumstances where you're starting to struggle and things are going downhill at times, like, do you really want to go out there and play hard for that? Like that's something that's just kind of sitting there in the back of my head and something to watch going forward with this UConn team, not just this year, but I think going forward as well. But I am going to have Xavier win this game. It's a got to have a game for them at home. It's going to be a raucous environment. I'll take them to have a win here to kind of prolong their season on the bubble and give them some life, moving them to 13-8. I'll go Xavier 80-77. So Xavier minus 2.5 over 41.5. I said the game on Friday night was probably the game I was looking forward to the most. I kind of forgot that there was this game as well. This is an awesome one. The first college game day on campus for college basketball this year. Number 6 Tennessee at 17-2 travels to number 1 Auburn at 17-1. 8:30 tip on ESPN. Haslam projects Auburn to win 74-66 here. So Auburn minus 7.5, over under 139.5.
Yeah, Coyle, right now I'm seeing on ESPN, it says, like the vivid seats, the tickets as low as $372. Love
Wow.
that. Expensive ticket to get into this game. This is a
Basketball
massive
club.
game. I love it. I mean, the SEC, they couldn't do it in football. They're like, fuck it, we'll just do it in basketball this year. I am going Auburn 75, Tennessee 67. I'll take Auburn minus 7.5, over 139.5. This is purely now the reasoning might be a little bit stupid, but I just can't get that 73-43 loss out of my head for Tennessee. I know that was an anomaly. I know since then, they went 3-1, tough loss at Vandy, but still, like, they stepped up and played a very, very good Florida team. Now you have to go to Auburn. I feel like, which is right there, Corey. You said it, like Auburn, Alabama, some, if not the best team, they're the second best team in the country. And I just think that's a very, very tough environment to go into. I think those Auburn fans are going to be lit. It's an 8:30 night game, so they're going to be hitting the sauce throughout the day, as they should, as they have the right to. You're the 8:30 ESPN game. You're the biggest show in town on Saturday night, and I think Auburn's going to handle Tennessee at home.
Yeah, on Saturday, I'm hitting the Palestra for Penn Columbia, and that game's at 2. So hopefully I have the right to be hitting the sauce as well before that. A game a little less the same magnitude, but I'm going to take Auburn to win, but I will go Tennessee to cover. I do think this game's going to be a war. The one thing that kind of scares me about that that Auburn gym gets loud. And when they're running up and down alley-oops or three-pointers, that is a place that can really take the roof off. With the excitement and the energy in that gym. That's one of those gyms that you can kind of even feel it throughout the TV. Like, wow, this place is really about to explode. So that's the thing that worries about me with Tennessee covering this number, because Auburn can get up and get away from anybody that comes into that building quickly. But I do think Tennessee's defense is still good enough to keep this within the number, but I will have Auburn win. I'll go Auburn 75-71, Tennessee plus 7.5, over 139.5. And then Sunday, our marquee game, I guess, on the college basketball schedule to lead us into conference championship weekend for the NFL. Neither of these teams are ranked, actually, but it is when we're starting to look at the bubble, these are two teams firmly on it, I think, as of right now. Maryland at 14-5. They're playing Illinois tonight. They would travel to Bloomington to play a reeling Indiana squad who's 14-6 that just lost to Northwestern last night. Noon tip on CBS. The analytics love this Maryland squad still. They're projected to win this game 80-71 on the road here. So Maryland minus 8.5, over under 150.5. Joe, got to have a game, I think, for both teams, especially if Maryland loses tonight. They've really struggled on the road. They travel to Illinois tonight. You don't want to lose a couple games in a row here. Do you think that they go to Indiana and get it done?
I do. I think they walk into Assembly Hall and pull off I would say upset, but they're 8.5 point favorites according to this. I'm going to go Maryland 74, Indiana 72. I'll take Indiana plus the 8.5. I'm going to go under 150.5 here. Indiana fans hate Mike Woodson. They want him gone. They were chanting "Fire Woodson" after I forget who they lost to a couple weeks ago.
It was
Maybe
Illinois. They got rolled.
yeah, it was when Illinois set the record for most points by a team in Assembly Hall. This is just an Indiana team that feels flat. They don't have the energy like a couple years ago. I think that Mike Woodson will be gone after the season, because I just don't like, it's tough when you wanna, when it's fan base wants your coach gone and the talent isn't there. Like, football's a lot different. Like Ohio State, they wanted to fire Ryan Day, but they still have the talent and they won a national championship. Like Indiana doesn't have the talent. Like they're not going to come bounce back and win the Big Ten. They're not going to come bounce back and make a deep run in the tournament if they even make it there. And I just think that negative energy around the program, it is kind of seeping in. They've lost 3 of their last 4, and their one win is against the weirdest team in the country in Ohio State for basketball. They won that game 77-76 in overtime. But I'm going to go with Maryland here in a tight one. I just think there's a lot of bad vibes going on around Indiana right now.
Yeah, there is a lot. It's certainly not a good situation. Indiana was a team that was really high coming into the year. I like what they did in the portal, but they just have not been able to put it together, similar kind of to what Arkansas has been. But Maryland has been really bad on the road. 0-4 on the road this year. As I said earlier, they travel to Illinois tonight. I think they make it 0-5 there. It's just a team that has really struggled in this spot. Got to have a type of game here for Indiana. If they lose this game, the Boo Birds and the Fire Woodson chants are going to be even louder. So I'm going to take Indiana to defend home court and get the win here, 77-71. So go Indiana plus 8.5 and the under of 150.5 there. That'll wrap it up for the college basketball weekend preview, Joe. Quickly before we head out, give me your NFC and AFC champion.
So I think we are going to get Chiefs Birds part 2 in the Super Bowl. I will be rooting for Bills versus Birds. That's my number one. That's like the matchup I'm rooting for the most. But I'm going to bet on both the home teams. As much as I hate to be that guy, I just think I see. I'm going to knock on wood for you, Coyle. I do not see a universe where the Commanders walk into the link and pull off that upset and go to the Super Bowl. I think the Bills can get it done against the Chiefs, but at the end of the day, I've learned the hard way over these years. I'm not betting against playoff Mahomes anymore. I won't do it. I don't care if I lose the rest of my bets until he retires. I'm not going to bet against him. So I'm going to go with Chiefs Eagles, and I think we'll get a rematch from 2 years ago.
Right there with you. Eagles, Chiefs, Super Bowl Sunday, February 9th. That'll do it for this week. A loaded college basketball slate this weekend. Get into it because March will be here before you know it. We got some big ones this week. Houston, Kansas, 2 top 15 teams. Tennessee, Auburn, 2 top 10 teams. Friday night, the game I'm really looking forward to, Michigan, Purdue. I got an upstart Vandy team hosting Kentucky. Florida sitting at 17-2, number 5 in the country, the best that they've been in forever. So really looking forward to this weekend on the hardwood. College football behind us. Get into the college basketball game now before it's too late. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we will talk next week.